Hey, what up? It's Tampa Brad, back with law number 22, got it that time, correct order, of the 48 laws of power. And law number 22 is use a surrender tactic, turn weakness into strength. So this law deals in the idea that is a very, very old idea and law of power, if you want to think of it that way, that if you can take your weakness or your disadvantage and turn it into your advantage, then you're basically unbeatable. And so this law is a very powerful one with that in mind. And so naturally the best laws in this book, the author Robert Greene uses super old Chinese proverbs. So I'll just dive right into the first example that he gives. And it's a example of some G named Guangdong or something like that. He's basically fighting with the emperor of the Wu kingdom, and so they're going at it, and the emperor of Wu totally beats his ass, and so the Guangdong guy has to surrender. And so what happens is he's advised by one of his very old wise advisors that surrender and make yourself subservient to the emperor of Wu so that you can learn his weaknesses and then come back eventually and exact your revenge. So he did exactly that. He surrendered and became a stable hand to the emperor of Wu and literally worked his way up over time so that he had a lot of insider information and knew the inner workings of the emperor's systems and of the kingdom. And 3 years later, the kingdom of Wu experienced a drought and they became poor, and a lot of their population decreased or left, and they were left in a very weak state. So the other dude raised up an army and then went and captured all of Wu and just beat him easily. So you don't necessarily have to be that ruthless unless you're a Chinese emperor. In that case, I applaud you and go do your thing. But if you're a normal person in the year, soon to be 2020, how can you use this? How can you use it to your advantage to surrender and actually make yourself stronger? Well, I love referencing the Bible in these videos. In the Bible, it says turn the other cheek, right? So that's a very, very powerful place to come from. The idea that someone can attempt to disparage you or to do something that's intended to harm you, and by showing that you're not affected by it, what effect does that have on the other person? Well, it completely disarms them. In Buddhism, there's a saying that, and supposedly the Buddha was asked this, he went through this situation. He was being berated by some government official when he was in some big meeting, and the Buddha just turns to him and says, if I refuse to accept a gift from you, to whom then does it belong? And the government official says, well, then it would belong to me if you refuse to accept the gift, if I'm trying to give it to you. And so then the Buddha asks, well, if I refuse to accept your beratement and disparaging comments, to whom then do they belong? And the answer is they belong to the other person. So if you don't allow someone else's attacks or disparaging remarks or whatever negativity someone is putting towards you and sending in your direction, if you don't let it affect you, if you bend, so to speak, and you bend in your like water and you just surrender to it and you just let it be there, it actually belongs to the other person. This is also a very good way to call attention to someone who's a bully. If you're around someone who's a bully, the best way to essentially disarm them completely is by not responding to the bullying and not letting it affect you. In Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, there's this guy, and I can't remember his name, but I used to be really big into Tim Ferriss, and Tim Ferriss loves Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and there's this really, really good teacher. I wish I could remember his name, but he's in New York, and people describe, he's won like 7 World Jiu-Jitsu championships or something like that. I don't know much about it, but I know he's really big. And what people say about him is they say that when they're fighting him, it's like fighting an empty jacket. He's like water, so to speak. It's so hard to pin him down because he's constantly, any offense he's allowing to happen and then moving around it. So it's not like this, it's more like that. So you can use this in your life by not being rigid, not being locked in and having to respond to someone in a certain way. If someone comes after you or attacks you or does something that's negative towards you, you just don't have to respond at all. And in fact, that's a lot of times the most powerful way to respond is just with nothing at all. If you can just manage to not acknowledge it, that's actually extremely, extremely powerful. So the other side of this that I wanted to hit is, I'm going to take a sip of my green tea between these. The other side of it that I wanted to hit is the idea of what is losing, what is, you know, being forced to surrender or being humiliated or whatever. In my opinion, it's actually very short-sighted, and the author goes into this in this chapter, and he discusses the idea that a loss is not really a loss if you put it in the perspective of the bigger picture of life. The only real time that you lose and you have no options left when you're living your life is actually when you're dead. As long as you're still alive and you can still function and you haven't been brought completely to zero, which in my book is death, you still are not defeated. So when someone says that, let's say they're going after their dream, or they're gonna go and start a business of what they've always wanted to do, and they're gonna live their passion, and then they get a setback and then they give up, they must not have wanted it that bad, because they didn't actually lose. It's a setback until literally in the year 2020, until you're dead. Anything bad that could happen to you, no matter how bad it is, it's just a setback. We have these. We have computers. I'm on my phone with me, but we have phones. There is no setback that you cannot overcome in the year 2020 and beyond with the technology that we have available to us. So using the surrender tactic in the idea of pursuing your life's goals means that you need to just accept whatever happens to you. If it's already happened, then you can't change it. Accept it as it is, surrender to it, and then turn that weakness into your advantage. Ryan Holiday has another awesome book. I've referenced a couple of his books. A great book that ties in perfectly to this law is his book, The Obstacle is the Way. It's actually probably the most famous of his books. It was used by the Seattle Seahawks to go to 2 Super Bowls, I think, and I believe that the Patriots' entire coaching staff was asked to read it a couple of years ago. So phenomenal book. It basically talks about using the setbacks that you have in your life to gain lessons and insights and an idea of gratitude for the things that happen to you, even if it's confusing as to why something's happening to you. If you're grateful for it and you figure out a way to turn it to your advantage, then you're essentially unbeatable. The obstacle, ironically, becomes the way when you become fluid and you are just determined in what you're gonna do, and you're always gonna figure out a way. The obstacle becomes the way. That's a Greek or Roman saying for you. So on that note, the obstacle to my success is not having you subscribe to this channel. So if you are not already, hit the subscribe button and then hit the bell next to it, and that will become your way to see all of this awesome content that we're pumping out at a furious rate. If you don't hit the bell, then you actually won't see. There's so much coming in your YouTube feed, you won't even see my videos. So you have to get the notification bell turned on. Also, my Instagram is @TampaBrad. If you want to interact with me personally, shoot me a DM there, and I respond to all my DMs. It's not that many, so I have no issue responding to them. But I would love to hear from you with any feedback or ideas or just conversation. I love talking about this kind of stuff. Obviously, I go out of my way to shoot videos about it, so I must love talking about it. Or maybe I just love hearing myself talk and I need an avenue for that. That could be it. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the vid. Hope you got great value out of it. Use this one. This is a very easy one to use. This is a day-to-day use law. So use it. Get value out of this. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace.